I think we're ready to start. Welcome to Zoom Palestine for a very special, wonderful program today, where we're featuring the introduction of Farid Bitar's new book, Screaming Olives, with his editor, Naomi Foyle, who will introduce him. But first, I want to introduce Naomi Foyle to you. She's quite an extraordinary person, and looking her up was really delightful to find out. She was born in London, England, but grew up in Hong Kong, Liverpool, and Saskatchewan. So she's also a Canadian. She worked in South Korea, traveled in Central America, Asia, and Australia, and now lives in Brighton, where she is she holds a PhD in creative writing, and she is the senior lecturer in creative writing at Chichester University and deputy director of Waterloo Press. The author of several novels and the author of many books of poetry. And she has been the birther of many books of poetry from other people. She has been a wonderful mentor and editor. And I'm going to now turn over the meeting to Naomi Foyle, who will introduce Farid Bitar and conduct the meeting. And welcome, Ziggy. Hi. And I'm sure we'll be popping in. Naomi, would you kindly introduce Farid for us?
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And thank you, Farid, for the honor of asking me to introduce you today and indeed to edit your collection. We met actually in Cairo on the Gaza Freedom March, which was held to commemorate the massive attack on Gaza in 2008 and 2009. It was held a year later. And I remember Farid distinctively, from all the organizing meetings, as people arrived in Cairo and we tried to get to Gaza and realized that we weren't going to be able to go. And in the end, it was the Palestinians who went and the internationals who stayed behind and demonstrated in Cairo. And then a few years later, I was editing A Blade of Grass for Smokestack Books, a collection of an anthology, Palestinian poetry, and Farid responded to the call for submissions, and that's where we really got to know each other. And through A Blade of Grass, I was, I feel like I'm now, very fortunate to call Farid my friend. We've traveled together in Palestine with Rachel Searle, the editor of the director of Blakefest, to launch A Blade of Grass in Palestine. And I've also been honored to read in New York with thanks to both Jackie and Farid. So it's an ongoing relationship, it's ongoing solidarity that we need to create. We need to create that rhizomic roots, the roots of the grass, because the grass will always reemerge. We don't have the masses of money. We don't have the military industrial complex on our side. We have what's more powerful than that. We have the human spirit, and we have justice on our side. So I've been, deeply involved in Farid's poetry through editing this collection. I would actually like to start by reading my introduction to it, because I think that it gives the most perhaps succinct but perhaps complex way that I can explain Farid's poetry and its effects. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read, it's about a page, I'm going to read the foreword to Screaming Olives, published this summer by Smokestack Books. Not simply a cry of anguish, though it is that too, Screaming Olives contains raw fruits of wisdom plucked from decades of a painful and violent history. the history of the State of Israel's attempted erasure of Palestine from the world map. This seemingly intractable geopolitical conflict dominates global headlines as an endless war, though the mainstream media generally neglect to mention that only one side has an army, not to mention nuclear weapons, and the financial backing of a superpower, while the other endures impoverished lives under a settler colonial apartheid regime. The catastrophe wrought by the creation of Israel is fundamentally, though, a human conflict, rooted on both sides in trauma, a collective trauma transplanted from Europe into Palestine that can only be healed by a just peace grounded in human rights. One of those rights is the right to speak one's truth. If the power of poetry stems from its ability to express the complexity of emotional truths, then in the stark absence of a political peace process, poetry's role is more important than ever. To share personal truths with friends, family, and strangers, even the enemy, and in so doing, generate awareness, encourage empathy, and help heal the individual writer and reader. Although bristling with political detail and urgently calling for change, Screaming Olives is not a manifesto, but a restless creative response to dislocation, dispossession, and colossal injustice. A child victim of war, witness to carnage and forced into exile, Farid Bitar has become a writer, painter, activist, and a man of faith. His consciousness a palimpsest of cultures, languages, and aesthetic vernaculars. His poems invoke the wounded child and the Sufi mystic, the American beats, Cavafy and Anna Akhmatova, graffiti and hip-hop artists, his Jewish cousins and a Druze lover, Arab writers from Al-Mutanabi to Dareen Tatour, bringing all these disparate perspectives to bear on the Palestinian experience of loss, brutality, and abandonment, the suffering of Gaza and the political prisoners, but also of survival, resistance, and solidarity, the diasporic grassroots, the suburban commute, Black Lives Matter. There's a chaotic energy to Bitar's voice, charged as it is with anger and grief, yet his poems also turn on a sharpened dime, in the midst of their fury glinting with humor or spinning off into yearning reflection. Sincere and vulnerable to the core, Farid Bitar tells it as it is, bluntly sharing his pain while also conjuring sensual images of the past, childhood memories which summon him like mirages, the Ithaca of his Jerusalem, a dream of justice that can never and will never die. Farid Bitar.
Naomi, if I may, I want you to also talk about how difficult it is when we traveled in Israel, Haifa, and other places, also in Cairo, but I don't want to tap into it too much. Behind me is a drawing of I Am Gaza, and that's from the Gaza Freedom March. I want you to maybe mention Dareen Tatour, actually, which prompted us to go to Haifa, if you don't mind. It was a very emotional thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dareen Tatour also is featured in A Blade of Grass. I came to know of her, you know, globally famous poem, Resist My People, Resist Them. And I was able to get her permission to include it in the book. This is the poem for which she was in the end charged with incitement to violence and imprisoned and placed under house arrest in Israel. And we were in Palestine reading from A Blade of Grass, and she was able to receive visitors. So although she could not come to the book launch went to her. And with Rachel and Farid, I traveled to Haifa and then to her home in Reina, and then where we met and read and talked about poetry, and it was beautiful to see Farid and Dareen connect and communicate, about their influences, about the fact of this sort of specter of imprisonment constantly hanging over Palestinian poets. the struggle that they have just to free their voice from that cage. And then to go to Nazareth on the 2 hours that Doreen was allowed to leave her house and explore and watch her take photographs of the pigeons and the cats. And this was all the night before her final sentencing. Rachel and I had to go on back home, back to the airport, but Farid was there in the courtroom, so he can tell you about that. Doreen has now published a memoir, My Threatening Poem, it's called. It's the English translation is available from Drunk Muse Press. It's a very powerful prison memoir, and I highly recommend it. And it certainly details every cruelty, really, that she suffered while in the Israeli prison system. And it needs to be heard. Not simply the cruelty of the injustice of the just the charges in the first place, but everything that happened to her along the way, the kind of the maliciousness that endangered her health while she was in prison. I think people probably want to hear your poems, Farid, so I think I'm going to turn over to you now. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in. First, I am very honored that Jackie, I know she was very ill. So thank you, Jackie, and you honor me. A huge detrimental thing. I thought we were going to postpone this, and I was back and forth with Naomi. I was more concerned about you than anything. I'm still a social worker, and you are amazing. I mean, you're a foot soldier. You're a peace soldier. You're. The more I know you, the more I tip my hat to you. You were very sick, and now you're doing this, and I just want to say thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. It's my honor, Farid. I'm better. I'm getting better. Thanks for antibiotics. But thank you very much.
Palestine also thanks you. So with that, and what Naomi was talking about Doreen, I had dedicated a poem to her, which is in the book. I was extremely moved being in the court, and I moved away to a corner and I actually cried. I know I'm a man, but I just couldn't help it. Doreen came and hugged me, and she said, "Do not cry. I will be out." And she was. And it was a moving experience. And I wrote Foot Soldier, and I dedicated it to Doreen. I'm going to read it. My words are bullets mowing down snipers at the Eretz crossing, at the barbed fence wires with smoke obstructing their view. My words flying over my land of 48, of 67, a long time ago, landing on trees, landing on fields of wheat. My words are detrimental to my enemy. I always speak the truth. Nothing will stop me. Nothing will stop me except a bullet from the IDF. Dedicated to Doreen Tatur, sentenced for 5 more months. Already spent a year and a half house arrest and 2 years in jail. The reason I'm reading it, I'm a Palestinian. I was very, very not publishing anything for many, many, many years. When we write, our families perish and they demolish our houses. So I waited for my parents to pass. And then I had no fear no more. I never did, but I was very afraid that they're going to hurt my family. So I'm very proud of the book. And I want to thank Andy Croft. Amazing. He's the publisher. He believed in me. Naomi believes in me. I met Andy in 2017 in London. And I actually traveled there to read the 4 poems of A Blade of Grass. That book is really wonderful. It tells the voices of the Palestinians. And Mahmoud Darwish is in it. And I remember reading with Naomi and two other poets under his tree, and that was moving as well. It was freezing. It was cold day, but I was so not feeling anything but the tree. So when Darwish is only 20 years away from me, his story is not similar to me, but almost is. He's in a village, Al Barwa, and when he passed, he would not be buried there, thanks to the Israelis. I'm a Jerusalem born. I'm not allowed to go live in my city. It's part of the book, I think. It's real. I need a lawyer to go there. I was born there, and 5 generations of me behind me. I'm not a refugee. So I wrote Screaming Olives just to tell my cousins how I feel. And I named the book that. Behind me, I don't know if you can see the cover. My brother kept telling me, read me the poem. I'm like, Mahmoud, leave me alone. He goes, no, read it. And I read it to him, and I read it to him, and I read it to him, and he did the design. The trees are screaming. They took 1 million trees out, and if not more. They don't only kill us, but they destroy our economy. They destroy our families. They destroy the trees. They steal our recipes. Hummus, falafel, and they call it Israeli. That's stealing as well. They're killing our existence. They're never going to stop. So we write. I write, and I know why I do. Because one day I'm going to go, hopefully not killed by the Mossad or anybody else. Screaming Olives. Beyond the evergreen, the settler is very mean. The olive tree glimpsed the oblivious coming, carrying a tank of petrol and an M16 hanging from his shoulder. The branches started waving hurriedly. Then the olives joined in, screaming like a chorus in a symphony, call our owners, call our owners. But no one comes. I wonder why. I wonder why. Is it because the soldiers are busy sniping the farmers in the harvest? The tree started yelling at the man, get out of my existence. Every time you come, I know I'm gone. Stop killing my babies. Stop suffocating my insides. Stop your savageness. Emmett Till, lynched in 1955. Way down, America down, Selma. Ali on the grill, the settler taunted, burned in Duma, West Bank, Palestine, 2015. Mississippi, still. I'm very proud of that poem because I also read it to a black rapper and I didn't end it. And she said, Farid. I said, what? She goes, Emmett Till. I said, who? Emmett Till. She said, Emmett Till. So I looked him up and I finished my poem. I link the Black movement to the Palestinian. We're not a movement. We're a cause. We're a land that's stolen. I don't care who tells me what. My land was stolen, and I want it back. And I don't care if the world or anybody else tells me not or is. My land is stolen. And to prove it, I wrote another poem crossing the West Bank to Jerusalem. And I haven't been home in 11 years because it's very painful. And I went to Jerusalem to see my sister and also to read A Blade of Grass. But they never stopped. They got me off the bus and they gave me the third, the fourth, and the fifth degree. And a blondie soldier insisted I have knives. So I wrote charcoals. A set of knives crossing a threshold into a holy grail. Soldier boarded the bus, screaming, get off the bus, collect your belongings. A search ensued. She's no more than 20 years old, screaming, he has a set of knives, came out of her hellhole, brandishing an M16. Screaming again, open your knapsack and show us your knives. I panicked. My heart dropped below zero inferno. I stated, it's only my set of charcoals that I brought to add some color to this war-ravaged town. Soldier extremely disappointed that I'm not a terrorist. I was saved, but only this time around. Charcoals. It was very painful for me to write it. So I'm gonna read to you about knocking. I dream about it, I think about it. Many Palestinians think about knocking on the door. My father lost his house in Katamon, and he knows where that house is. And unfortunately, the Israelis they keep talking about their Holocaust, but they don't talk about Holocausting other people. I have feelings. I feel bad that Germany, whatever did to them, but I just cannot believe that them in particular are doing this to us. We never did anything to them, ever. So there is knocking. I knock on a door in a blood-rent sky, hoping sanity will let me in. I stand on the rock of ascension, thinking my savior is coming. I return to my mad world. No one is paying attention to me. I see a bird of a magnificent color. It's my favorite egret. He looks so tranquil. He tells me not to worry. Don't worry. I knock on the door again. 40 years had passed. 40 years had passed. A woman opened the door and yelled at me, what do you want? You again? Didn't I tell you not to come back? I said, yup, it's me again. I never left. Knocking. We never left. And we were not in empty land. I don't know how they sold the world that we were empty land and it was a desert and they made it green. I don't know how. I was there, my father was there, and my forefather was there, and so on and so forth. And we know our history. So it's not an empty land. They're just powerful about selling shit stories like that. They still talk about their Holocaust. They don't talk about Lebanon in 82. They don't talk about Gaza, 2009. They don't talk about 2014, fish in a barrel. They don't talk about testing their weapons everywhere. The US gives it to them. We're a ground testing ground for them. I'm not angry, I'm pissed off. I'm beyond. I call my people just to see if they're alive. I don't know if I'm a poet. We have a lot to talk. We have a lot to write. My mind is so occupied, I don't sleep at night. And God bless America. Now, I'm going to read you A Child of Peace. Another real poem that I wrote very fast. I'm a child no more. Behind me is I Am Gaza, a child. That's me in 67. That's a child in Gaza. I didn't paint that. Somebody else did. When I put it on my wall at work, and everybody puts whatever they want, they took that card to my management and they charged me of inciting violence. And I told them I didn't paint that. But they charged me. They almost fired me. It passed. Allah is great. I didn't get fired. So I wrote Child of Peace. I wrote many nasty poems for them. But I wrote this for my sanity. A Child of Peace. Actually, I said A Child of War, and then I changed it just to fuck with them. A child of peace. I'm a child of peace. I think not. I knocked on the door. I tripped on a shaky soil. I struck my head on an olive tree. It didn't break. My head didn't break. I think not. Have seen too many wars. Have wanted peace forevermore. I witnessed blood tattooed on a stone. Have seen broken bones carved on the wall. I tried to open my father's door in Katamon. That is West Jerusalem, you know. That is West Jerusalem, you know. We didn't forget. That is West Jerusalem, you know. You heard? West Jerusalem, you know. They barked at me, get lost some more. I shake no more, I cry no more. I'm a child of peace no more. I don't want that right of return no more on the paper, that is. I don't want that peace signed on the paper, you know. I'm a child of peace no more. I do want peace, I'm sure. I do want my city, I'm sure. The peace I yearn is a peace that never comes. You know, Jerusalem, you know, in a distant land, maybe it's there. When a black child and a white child and a yellow child and a purple child play together, that is the peace I want. But the peace I want never comes, you know. Never comes, you know. No more wars, I'm sure I want. I am sure I want. With dignity, with real justice, is the peace I dream about. I'm a child of peace. I think not. A child of peace. Maybe not. I also have nice things to write. I lived a good life back home. And I wrote many nice poems. When my mother asked me to go down to the old city to buy her the ingredients, and I used to make the cake with her. So I always reflect back on these times. And I always write about them. And I wrote a poem on Mahmoud Darwish's O Jerusalem, which his poem is powerful. But when I wrote my poem to Jerusalem, I wrote it through my childhood experience. You know, I lived 17 years in Jerusalem. And when I close my eyes, I write about the old city. They're never going to take that from me, ever. And that's why I keep writing. I'm a witness. My older brother is a witness. 5 million of us who have no right of return will return. We're the birds, you know. We will return. I don't know how many poems I wrote about the return, and I keep forgetting them. I just want to know, Jackie, how much longer I have, because I always end with a Sufi style poem. I don't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah. You've got a good 25 minutes, so 25 minutes. So no, or 20 minutes because we want to have time to talk too.
Okay, I'll make it shorter.
Keep going for me. We can go over time, no problem. Just keep reading.
I just want to know time because I'm I respect time.
It's 3:30 now.
Okay. So
we're good. We're good. We're good.
I do change my hats, and I'm an artist, and I wear what I read, and I talk what I do. So my first beret was this. Che Guevara, my father in the revolution. Mahmoud Darwish, my father in poetry. But I'm a revolutionary at heart. I was born, after all, on July 14th, Bastille Day. So people tell me, why are you so angry and revolutionary? I said, I'm not angry, pissed off, but I'm a revolutionary. Yes, I am. I'm a Bastille Day French, very famous. I get free wine. So they laugh at me. And they go, you have a serious face. I said, yes. And Palestine is behind me. My room is Palestine. It never leaves me. They're never going to take that from us. There are 5 million of us with no right of return. And the other 4 million in there getting cooked, killed, and maimed. And they put a knife next to them and they say they had a knife and this and that. So we're expendable. But they're very, very, very not expendable. When one soldier dies and gets held by Hamas, they trade him by hundreds of prisoners of Palestinians just to get him back. We're expensive too. We're humans. And I don't like that collateral damage thing. It offends me and upsets me. And I get upset that they call the Iraqis and the Afghans and the Palestinians collateral damage. You know why? Because they print every soldier's name in the New York Times that dies. And when 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 die, civilians, they call them collateral damage. We have every name the Palestinians die. We have all the names. We keep them. Because one day we're going to come back. And just like they go to Germany and they collect reparations, we're going to do what they did to us. They owe us reparations. They owe me and many others. My father's house, that's in the old city, and they call it the Jewish quarter now. It was the Moroccan quarter. That's a big lie, huge lie. They erase, ethnically cleanse, and they say, we don't know what you're talking about. You're an idiot. You're a terrorist. You're just delusional. While the billionaires in the US are sending their money to erase us, I will not be erased. Allah is my witness. So is the rest of the Palestinian families. And they're all my family. They are, all the Palestinians are my family. They all are. The 5 million outside, the 4 million inside. I'm a poet and I write for them. I write for my sanity. And this is the right of return. My luggage is packed. I always have my bags ready to go anytime. I've traveled for years, no destination but one. Always complaining, no one paying attention. No one wants to hear my story. not even all the Arab world. They choose to ignore me. I land in Cairo to go to Gaza under siege to visit my resisting nation. Mr. Mubarak said no can do. I mean, Netanyahu and Obama too. You know, no can do. They told Mubarak no can do. He changed his mind. My suitcase on my shoulder. In all of the airports, they call me a terrorist. They keep asking me to leave and never come back. I always surprise them and I come back. I don't care. I don't let it get to me. I never listen to anyone. I do what I want. One day will come. I will live in Jericho, my sleepy town, the one I left eternity ago. One day I will go back to Jericho and be left alone, where it all started, and build that home that I always dreamed of, and start my life from scratch. After my death in exile, I demand from my land to be created so my soul can visit happily ever after, instead of keep visiting the land of Zion with lots of anger, the right of return. This is dedicated to the Palestinian population. I'm not going to take all that time. I'm also I paint, but I weave my poetry into music, my own poems. I'm a Sufi at heart. Sufi is a branch of Islam that's mystic. So with your permission, Jackie, I'm gonna do the one poem I always do on the daf. Usually I do it on the tabla, but I'm gonna do it this way. It's called the Jerusalem Drum. Of course I wrote it. Born. Born in a holy land, I was born. A land that knows no peace and always weeps. Where prophets walked and memories burn, where prophets walked and memories burn. Land of 1,000 eyes that never sleeps and always weeps. In my veins, my childhood boy runs in the sand. Naked as a bird, free in my soul, above the earth where the bombs explode. Allah! Hey! Allah! Hey! ايه والمالي والقدوس ايه والسلام الله 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 حي ايه والمالي ايه والقدوس ايه والسلام والسلام ايه يا حبيبي يا مالي ايه يا حبيبي الله 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 حي الله 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 حي. God is alive, God is alive, and his slave is alive, and God is alive. I'm going to end. I really would like to hear some echo from others. I'm just going to say, thank you, Jackie, again. I want to thank Naomi 1,000 times for believing in me and the Palestinian cause. She honors me a whole lot. Andy Croft honors me. please look up my book, smokestackbooks.com. It's a very good cause. It's not just about the money. It's about a nation. I'm selling myself, but I'm selling my nation first. They come first. And I owe them. I always owe them. From the river to the sea, right behind me, in red. We're from the river to the sea. We didn't forget. We're from the river to the sea. You know what that means? The East Bank is Jordan. That's the river, Jordanian River, where Jesus washed his feet. And the sea is the Mediterranean. And we were all of that. We still are. They can eat whatever land they want. They can do whatever the hell they want. Empires go, they come down. And with that said, the grass will grow on the wall. And that's in a blade of grass. And we will grow on the wall. I don't care how many hundreds of years. I just wish it's on my lifetime. That's all I have. That's all I have, Jackie.
Naomi,
Questions?
Naomi, would you like to conclude and conduct the discussion?
Thank you, Farid. I've got some questions for you from that powerful reading, which I was following along with the book, and I please do really urge everyone to take a look at the Smokestack books and buy the book. It's also for sale on the Palestine Solidarity Campaign national website in the UK, which I was really chuffed to see. I want to thank you for bringing back so many memories of our travels together. I have to say, in that situation at the checkpoint, that was a terrifying situation. Everything kind of went numb at the time. We were just like frozen, like, what is going on? This woman is like screaming that he's got knives. This is Farid. Rachel and I don't know what to do. I have to say, Farid handled it like just perfectly, in that he was just able to keep his cool, and because anything could have just set this woman off. You could see exactly how a situation would happen where I could have lost my friend, and then it could have been twisted, like murdered in front of my eyes, and then it could have been twisted that he had a knife, because somehow a knife would have appeared to make up for the knife that she thought that it was a tray of charcoals. She thought was a tray of blades. So that was, that was a situation that a poem needed to be written about, I think. Thank you for writing it, including it in the book. I want to also, I want to thank the people we stayed with in Haifa. Yoav, Haifawi, and Iris Bar, who would not like to be called Israelis. They don't call themselves Israelis. They call themselves Palestinians. They're Jewish Palestinians.
Tell them what they want to do. They want to return the house.
Yeah, they want to return the house. We stayed in a house that they bought in the Arab. It's an Arab house, an old Arab house. They have the papers. They've gone and done due diligence. They found out the papers, and now they're just trying to. It's all online. They're trying to find the owners so that they can give it back to them. We stayed with them because they are Doreen Tatour's friends and linked to the outer world. Yoav in particular, I communicated with on email about Doreen and with Doreen through him. So there is a movement beginning in Haifa for one democratic state, where from the river to the sea, the Palestinians who do have a right of return will find that right of return honored and be able to come back. And no one will be driven into the sea. It was the Palestinians who were driven into the sea in Jaffa and no one will be driven into the sea anymore. You know, we're living in a time where we know that we have to live together and work together, and that is the movement that started in Haifa, which is a very high proportion of Palestinian residents, and therefore this movement is a movement that is led by Palestinians, that Jewish Israeli born, if you like, you know, citizens of Israel participate in a solidarity and inequality. It's a burgeoning movement. More and more people are joining it, and believing that it is the only way forward, because the two-state solution has, you know, has never been possible, you know, and never it's just been a mirage, you know, the whole time. So anyway, thank you, Farid, for the poems. I guess I have a question to start with, and then maybe I'll open it up. You know, I know when you gave me the poems, there were many versions sometimes of the same poem, and I was like, which one do you want? And you were like, I want both. And now when I hear you read versions that I never even read. So
I know.
it seems to me like this is part of your practice. You say sometimes, oh, I'm not, you know, you say, oh, I'm not a poet. I think a lot about political poetry and the way that we're told that poetry is this very kind of narrow form, which has got to be lyrical, and it's got to be, you know, about, you know, all about the poet's heart, and not about, you know, any kind of facts, you know, in the world, or any kind of political beliefs. I've been reading abolitionist poetry. You know, we're not told about the abolitionist poetry. You know, how many people were writing powerful, informed, geopolitical poetry to end slavery. You know, the Victorians were writing it. The freed enslaved people were writing it. You know, this is a genre of poetry that's not talked about, and I think we need to have that knowledge of it, what poetry has done historically, so that Farid doesn't have to say I'm not a poet, because you are a poet, and you're a poet. You're a spoken word poet. You're a performance artist. You've got a shamanic quality. So maybe every time you read these poems, you know, they're a bit different. So how do you feel having them in a book? Is that a bit actually frustrating to have them pinned down in a book?
It's extremely frustrating. Thank you for tapping on. I'm an honest person. Ramadan is not here, but I'm still honest.
Yeah.
It's extremely frustrating. I don't know if you remember when we were in London, while we were sitting there, and I felt like I have to behave. I was writing something, and I play harmonica as well, and I played it right there, and you were like, and I'm like, should I tell her? Should I not? I didn't tell you. I just wrote down how I was feeling, and I performed it on the harmonica. And you were so gracious. Just Farid plays harmonica, and it wasn't part of the blade of grass either. I'm a poet. I'm not a poet. My mother told me one thing. She was a painter. She said, never say you are, because that's a selfish thing to say, because you don't know who you are, and there's always one person who's better than you. So don't say I'm a poet, I'm an artist. So I learned that from her. She never said she's an artist, and she was powerful, galleries and everything. And I'm like, Ma, you're an amazing artist. She says, an artist. So she showed me. It's just, I don't feel I'm a poet, but I am, because I write and I do as I feel. And even when I perform in places, I mess with my own poem as I go. I just go. I do that in Cornelia. I do that everywhere. And many people go like, but that was not exact word by word. I'm not a professor. I'm not a this. I just go as the flow goes. And I get restricted on the paper. I don't know if I answered you on it.
That's the creative process. There are artists who would have their friends check for the guards in the Louvre so they could go in and touch up their paintings. I think managed to do that, because even after it's hung up, you know, there's always something else you want to do. I know I have that disease. I can never finish a painting. So I think that's just a process that shows you're a creative person.
Yeah. Can I say a word about this? Naomi talked about traditions, and Farid is actually in a very long tradition. in this respect. Walt Whitman changed the poems in every edition of Leaves of Grass. They were never final. He was always tinkering with them. If a rock band records a particular version of a song and then they perform it and it's different, nobody complains. So, it seems to me, as Jackie says, there's nothing wrong with coming to a final. I do that in my own books. I always have a little note in the beginning. Poems reserve the right to change without notice.
I agree.
So nobody will think that what's here on the page is final, and they do. They often do. And I print them in small batches of 5 or 10, and then I change them the next time if I feel like it. So I think it's fine.
You have the rights.
Yeah.
You own the right. Steve,
well.
I just want to say something, Steve.
Yes.
I want to thank you for your blurb on the back of my book. And I love what you wrote. It's so real. I don't know if you remember what you wrote, but
I don't even remember what I wrote. Maybe someone will read it.
So I owe you a book, but I owe you a gratitude because you believe in me and you believe in Palestine. So thank you.
Okay.
And I'm so happy you're here. So I want to say one other thing about what Naomi was talking about. I already forgot, but I think I remember. There was a point that she mentioned. I just wish I remember. It left me now. I'll come back to it. I don't remember what I had it. I should have wrote it down when she mentioned something about changing the poem and not reading it the same way it is and other things. I'll come back to it when it comes back to me. But if anybody else wants to say something, I see Ziggy. Ziggy's on. I love Ziggy. Ziggy, you left? She left.
No, I didn't leave. I'm here.
Please say something. I love you.
It's so good to hear you. And I'm in between two places. So I bought your book and it was delivered right before I left Oakland, and now I'm in New York for a while. So I don't have the book with me. But I'm gonna be heading back to Oakland for a while too. So I'll get it there and I'll refresh myself. But I read when you read a couple of these poems, I'm like, yes, I read them in the book. Some of it was familiar to me. And I want to say that you definitely, when I first saw you, it was actually at a Steve Bloom activist roundtable at the Brecht Forum, and you had Fatouche Ensemble, right?
Yes.
Right? Yes. So I met you as a performer, and I've always seen you first that way, and so it's very exciting to see the publication of your work and in book form, but it's a snapshot of you. I remember going into the recording studio ourselves, and we went to a jazz vocalist, because we have a jazz poetry ensemble, and she said, don't forget, this is what you'll be doing in the studio is just a snapshot, because we also were concerned that that's the record, the recording, and when you perform live a lot, we hadn't had a recording yet. You're used to doing it all different ways depending on the audience and what musicians you have with you and all of that. And the poems change. The rhythm sometimes almost changes. So I remember her saying that this is just a snapshot of a particular time and space of what it was. And so when you have it in book form, it's a snapshot, and they're lovely, and it's a way of getting them out to the world. And then people have to invite you to perform them wherever, all over the world.
I do that when I'm recording. It comes out as it goes in the flow, because the recording engineer, I recorded 2 CDs and the third one, and he tells me, go with the flow. Fuck you, Farid. I'm like, hey, don't curse me. He goes, no, I love what you do, man. He was Armenian. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you don't restrict yourself. Just keep going. And he helped me. He recorded 2 CDs for me, and he's free. Just go with the flow on the mic. Just swallow first, though, and breathe right. I'm like, so I go with the flow. I go with the energy. I go with the flow. And Brent Leon was in my ensemble, and I miss him terribly. He was a composer, He goes, Farid, you don't stick. No, 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 no. You don't do the notes. I'm like, the notes? What notes? I don't read notes. He says, you're terrible, man. I'm like, yeah, but you're good too. And he was so like restricted because of the notes. And he started learning to leave the notes and just go. And my CD and his were success because we started teaching each other. I wrote 3 poems and he put them together for me as a rap. I say, I hate rap. He goes, shut up, just let me do it. So he did it. And that's one of my poems that people love. I'm a sand nigga. And I rap it down and they go, see, Farid, you screwed up. They love it. They do. I rap it down. I'm a sand nigga. And I go da 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 da. And people love it because I have it in my head. I go. And one time we were in Montclair University. They hated us. They just didn't want us there. But the students, I didn't know what to do. There was 500 people. I didn't know what to do. I went to San Niga. Everybody got quiet and they loved it. And Grant goes, oh, you're amazing, man. I'm like, yeah, that's you. So the recording is very intense and it's expensive, but you go with the flow. And when Naomi was saying, you're not restricted, I'm not a professor, I'm not a this, I write. And I just write how I feel. And it changes. And like Steve said, you own your own rights. So you can change it. It's not word by word, but then when it goes down in the book, it's straight down. But I do a lot of shows and I go with the flow. So I won't stutter, so I won't get nervous. I just keep going. And my music helps me actually. When I do my tablas and I relax. And if I'm really tense, I start playing. And I know, Ziggy, you know about that. It relaxes you. Music relaxes a lot. And then I'm not tense. I never get nervous, but I get tense sometimes. And I don't want to show it. So I go into music. And it helps me come back. And I start remembering actually. You know, you've recorded. And Raymond, I miss Raymond. He's amazing too. His voice and he sends me his poems, and I like that. So we're all into that, and the creation. Jackie mentioned that it's the creation thing, and one complements the next, and it goes on. Naomi too helps me. She's like when I read her stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I'm nowhere near what she does. I'm nowhere, but I do a different thing. We don't have to do the same. I feel like I'm not good enough, but so what? I should do what I have to do. And I'm doing it for my people other than me. So I have I believe I have a very strong cause and I go, they drive me. Palestine drives me all the way. And I thank Allah for that. And I thank the Sufis for that, like Rumi and others. I learn just a little bit from them how to keep going, and my nation drives me. Palestine is after God for me, and then the rest. And that's all I want to say, Ziggy.
I did have a question about a geographical reference because I don't know the land. And you mentioned you've used Jericho and Jerusalem, and are they one part of the other, or are next to each other, or what's the relationship between, or was one an ancient name for the other, or?
Jericho is the oldest city in the whole world, and it's the lowest point on earth, and it's down in the valley near the Jordanian border. And I grew up there the first 5 years of my life, and my father was a merchant in Jericho. So it's a very, very hot climate. It's 120 in the shade. And in the summer, you don't want to live there, but in the winter, it's just a resort for the Jerusalem people who are snotty, and they go down to Jericho to vacation. And my mother's family lived in Jerusalem. She always left the whole summer, and lived in Jerusalem with her family because it's so hot. So they're only 40 miles apart. But Jericho is sacred to me. And It's part of the West Bank. It's part of the PA, and Jerusalem is off limits because Israel says no return of East Jerusalem.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. I see Jackie's roommate on.
Kelvin. Kelvin.
You want to say
Yeah.
something?
I'm Jackie's roommate. I'm I love it. I think it's great. It's very authentic. And one of the things of you find when you have that, it doesn't always come from most people. You're so passionate, it probably always does for you. But when you have that pure feeling that you have to express something and you just know it, and you kind of like floundering almost for like, okay, I've got a pen, I've got a this, I've got a this. But I want to say that when you realize, okay, you do have the chance to make a difference because your intention is really clear and you're just following the drive of your intention. Even the word poem is just something that you use. It's not something that uses you. So what other people do in established formats and, oh, I don't do like these or professors or this and this, and it's like, leave it. It's there for you. The format is there for you to express yourself, and it's as flexible as you can make it. You push the limits of what it is. According to that drive of your intention and integrity. And so don't feel ever that there's something that has to be lived up to as an external standard. It's like all those things are just words and ideas. Your expression is the pure thing, and that's what reaches the world. So use whatever you got. And if poem is the thing, fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, I would just echo that. I mean, we're like apples and oranges, really, so, you can't compare us. You're writing in like this kind of very, I mean, if you just like freestyle, I suppose, but it's not freestyle because there's this real kind of, I don't know, kind of compact terseness to it, to the things you want to say. But also what I feel with your work, as I tried to express in the introduction, is that because you've read so much from all these different traditions, you're amalgamating so much from Arab classical poetry, from the Russians. She was also a great political poet, Akhmatova. So all of this is kind of in this fragmented way, kind of coming forward. So in your work, and this kind of kaleidoscopic quality, which makes sense to just keep shifting it, keep turning the kaleidoscope. But everything that you have put in the kaleidoscope is just really intense and relevant. And it's all brought together, I think, in the mandala that is your consciousness of what, that is, and the light of what you've been through. So I mean, what you've got is highly distinctive, and it's highly honed, over decades.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I wanted you to Naomi, I know you're my host. I just want you to tap a little bit more on certain poems, such as the Darwin poem. I remember Ziggy, I asked her and she read Resist My People. This had left attached very strong in my mind. Darwin's poem, Resist, had left an indelible thing in my head, and I'm sure you too as well. Darwin had, I called her, I started translating some of her poems. We connected so much after I visited her, and she drove me a little bit more on sacrifice, and it is for Palestine. Don't worry about it. I am happy I did that. I'm like, wow, if she did that and I'm like nowhere near there, she taught me a lesson of I've never been in jail. And this woman is so powerful and so proud of what she's doing. And nobody was hiring her in Israel. So she's in Sweden now. If you can maybe tap on it a little bit, because we're going to work with her soon in September.
Well, this idea of being called not a poet, I have to say But what actually disgusted me deeply about Dareen's situation is that there were so many, I have to say, there were older male Palestinian poets who, in a
Yes.
situation where their opinion of whether she was a poet or not made the difference,
They were
her
questioning
going
her.
to jail or not, came out in public and said that her work was not good and she was not a poet.
Yes,
Because
yes.
her defense rested on the fact that she had written a poem, and she had people in her community saying that she was not a poet, and because probably out of jealousy that she's getting a lot of attention, and sexism basically.
Beat them at their own
I think
game.
that
It's
has to be remembered.
like play with the words, you know.
Hmm?
I said beat them at their own game. How they say it's anti-Semitic to saying Gaza is being bombed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You say Gaza's being bombed, it's anti-Semitic. You can't say that. So it's like, playing with it.
Well, yeah, I know. No, I know this. Yeah,
They wear me
you
out.
you can't say that. Yeah, exactly. That there's an atrocity, that Israel had committed an atrocity is like, actually I've seen documents in my workplace to say that you could be accused of anti-Semitism for using that wording. No, it's true.
I mean, I think that I don't know. It's a change. How I like to stay on the point, but just that honestly, what I've seen from especially America, the way the political administration works and the financial administration works, and Hollywood and everything, you can only go past a certain stage if you've signed allegiance, and you're not going to talk about it. And if you haven't signed allegiance, really, that you're not going to cross a certain line over Israel, you're removed. You don't have your next salary, your next job lift, your next this. They only want people up the system in the United States if they're Zionists, because they're run by Zionists.
So I'm going to redirect this to Jackie. Jackie, we have any time left? I would love. I know it's Poetry Week this week, first week. If there's enough time for Steve, Ziggy, and maybe Naomi to read their own poems, if there is any time left.
And it's Jerusalem Action Month also.
Yes.
So I think we can extend our session in honor of Jerusalem.
I watched that Zoom and it's powerful.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to do that. I would love to hear their poems as well. I know it's first week is poetry.
Maybe if each one could read one poem, that would be great.
Of their own poetry.
Yeah.
I just need to get one, so start without me.
Steve? Do you have something you can read?
You're muted, Steve.
Mute.
Unmute.
I unmuted myself. Thank you. Since I've got one I can do from memory, I will, and it's one of Farid's favorites. I will do that one. Israel, Gaza, 2008, 2009. Call out the names of the dead so that we may mourn. Call out the names of the dead. Call out the names of their killers so that we may rage as we mourn. Call out the names of their killers. Call out the names of those who march in protest so that we may give thanks as we rage and mourn. Call out the names of those who march in protest. Call out the names peace, justice, freedom, Palestine, so that we may hope as we give thanks, rage, and mourn. Call out the names peace, justice, freedom, Palestine. And when the time has come to call out the names of all those who remain silent as we are calling out these names, let us pray that yours will not be among them.
I love this poem.
Wow.
I just love it.
Wow, that's great.
Ziggy? You have a poem?
Okay. I wanted to thank Jackie and Steve because they're gatherers. They're poetry people, poet gatherers as well. So thank you. Thank you both. It's called Yellow Wind. awakes to blood on her hands, blood flows from an injured heart. She awakes screaming, Kristallnacht. Only there is a fine sand caught in her throat. Halfway round the orb spits a currency of yellow wind, howls through dwellings bulldozed and bombed. The tweet reads, settler mobs are lynching Palestinians and destroying their homes, shops, and places of worship. At 8, she dreamt the Nazis were taking blood from her parents in the other room. She would be called next. She woke to scribble her name and the date on Scotch magic tape, bandaging a piece of toy furniture to be remembered. She is 16 and her TikTok plays. So you're proud of yourself coming here to kill children, confronting soldiers with automatic rifles in the hallway of her apartment building. Imagine that grandmother who's walking past their grandfather clock with Arabic numbers, coaxing her to be silent. Get away from the door and don't talk to them. Put on my scarf. Don't look them in the eye. When will you learn? Whose house is being overrun? Whose child is being chased, blinded, murdered? Whose biblical pretext is gaslighting the other? Whose eye for an eye for an eye ad infinitum busts out of sockets from a rubber bullet aimed with apartheid intent? The report reads, a Jewish man in his 30s was lynched by protesters who mistook him for an Arab. She was 29, in a kitchen in Oakland, meeting a young Lebanese man who looked more like her cousin than anyone else she had met in California. His growing up years, his family under occupation, the Israeli military, he told her in concise stories, headlines that read backwards. Looking in his dark brown Lebanese eyes, this could be cousin spinning out a mirror image of what she learned or thought she knew. His words, his lived experience, tore her inside out.
Wow. Beautiful.
Mm.
Powerful.
Jackie, you're a poet.
Oh, I can't, I'm too weak today, but Naomi, why don't you say
Yes,
something?
please. Naomi.
Naomi.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think I'm going to read some poems on the theme of Black Lives Matter because it feels like, we all want to connect up struggles in our poems. So these are from a series of lockdown poems that I wrote last year. One of my New Year's resolutions in 2020 was to read more local newspapers. So after George Floyd was murdered, I went to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune because I just wanted to find out more about him as a person, which I wasn't getting on the, the international news. That king should not have died before his time, says Big Floyd's ex-girlfriend, who now will never give him that bottle of tahine she was keeping for their first post-lockdown meetup. A shakeable mix of chili, salt, and lime. Perfect on mango popsicles, margarita rims, corn on the cob, steak, fajitas, omelets, popcorn, hot chocolate, you name it. A Mexican life hack I only know about, thanks to a life hacked by America's axe. A gentle giant, complex king who had done his time, learned his lessons, found a precarious place working security at the Congo Latin Bistro, but who will never again hug his regulars, his children, felled across the path we all walk together until we don't anymore.
Powerful. This will be recorded, and actually there's a transcript, so I might even be able to transcribe, get some of the poems and send them out, because I think all of his poetry is something we want to.
Jackie, if you've uploaded it to YouTube, send me a link because I have a program that can download the entire script of the YouTube. It makes it into subtitles into a document, which is like a single text file. So I just got a little program in the computer that does that most of the time.
Okay, great. So I want to thank everybody. I have good news. We're all in the news, and I'm going to share a screen with showing you all my article in Westview News, which is one of the best New York local newspapers from Greenwich Village, and it's called West Bank Meets the West Village. And it's about our Zoom programs. And you're all mentioned. Frank Romano is mentioned. We talked about the poet from Gaza and Kamil Kali, the journalist from Hebron. And we also talk about Naomi Foyle, who helps organize sessions. And we're talking about that Farid Bitar has a program coming up, Palestinian. About Farid Bitar also read, who also read at Westbeth. And what's cool is that the editor said I can send copies to the journalist in Hebron and to Naomi in England and to the Gaza, the gentleman from Gaza, and they can have a bundle of newspapers to show. So I'm very excited about that. And so far, nobody's attacked my door, but I've been in bed all week, so I don't know if anybody came to kill me, because I've just been too sick to notice. But anyhow, so this month for Jerusalem month, I'm going to try to focus on Jerusalem. If you have any speakers or anybody you think would be good to be a guest, please let me know. Because and I think Farid is, I just love listening to you, Farid, because you give me energy and strength. You have such passion and power, and if I get overwhelmed or depressed or despondent or feel there's nothing you can do, I just have to listen to you or read one of your poems, or because you are a fighter. You're not giving in. You're not rolling over and playing dead. So I think we all need your energy. So today's session was so great. It'll be made into a YouTube, sent out to people, and then a lot of people who didn't make it today during our session will see it later on. So and now that we've made the press, hopefully we'll have more people being aware of the problems. So thank you so much, Naomi, for bringing us together and your wonderful introduction and poem. And Steve, Ziggy, Kelvin, Frank was here. I think he left.
Gone.
Yeah, he's in Lebanon, I think. So it's very hard for him to connect. So Farid, what's your next plan? What do you have in mind?
My next plan is very clear, and please, Naomi, don't get upset. My book had meant to have the Arabic in it, one poem and one. I have 48 Arabic poems, and I'm gonna really pursue that, and that's my next project right away. One poem English, one Arabic. I did a whole book, Treasury of Arabic Love, a year and a half of research. It was one-on-one, and I'm not jealous, but it wasn't my material. But now I'm gonna do 48 poems, 1948. I'm a number person, I'm a finance major. 48 poems Arabic, 48 poems English, one-on-one, page on page, and my about 67 or maybe less paintings. I'm put together probably a year from now, and I'm looking for a publisher that will accept that. So that's my next project.
That's great, Farid. That'll help me with my attempt to read Arabic, which I'm still struggling with. So thank you, everybody, and everybody have a wonderful week. Does anybody have anything else they want to say before we all vanish into the real world?
Really, thank you very much to listen. So fresh from the source.
So
Yeah, I have a poem. It's 14 minutes long. If you ever need in your Jerusalem month or something,
Okay.
just let me know a bit before.
Okay, all right, we'll talk.
I think Steve wants to say something.
No, I was just twinkling the thank you. That's all.
Okay, all right. Okay, bye, everybody.
Thank you for it.
Thank
Salama,
you.
salama,
Thank you for having us.
Shukran, shukran jazilan.